but he's also our elected county surveyor. So we have a few surveyors that do a lot of work in the county, so there's nothing against them. I've got him because he is our elected county surveyor.
What does that mean? Does he review the work of others then?
Who do you do as a county surveyor?
Okay.
It honestly is that position that has no benefit for me personally, for Fort County. I'd like to change that. So there's several counties in the area that when plats are submitted, they go to the county surveyor to review for errors. And I'll show you one today that has an error on it about our regulations, like survey's regulations and standards.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and if you can't hear either of us? Okay.
Can't turn that thing around.
No. Well,
Maybe you guys sit up there.
here, we can just,
Why don't you all sit up there?
well, if you want to sit up there, you can.
And you can do the.
And I'll just put the plats on once you. Thank you.
Just do the normal video like you would.
Yeah.
So the other thing he does as county surveyor is what we utilize him for is if we have a discrepancy of something. And so we had a subdivision that was going before the planning commission not too long ago, and there was discrepancy on a piece of land that was in the rear of the subdivision where they were going to want to put a connection on who owned that piece of land. And so Jim Silliman, our county engineer, actually went to Walter and got his feedback because he's the county surveyor. So there's nothing really that spells out that we have to do that. We just think that's probably the most accurate thing to do. So we occasionally utilize him for that, and then obviously bringing him in here for this training. Yeah, how do you get paid? Do you get paid at all?
I get paid by my company. I get no financial benefit from the county at all.
Like when a real estate deal is being done, that's part of the real estate fees, transaction, or?
No, I get paid by my client. So when somebody calls me, wants to get a survey done, a boundary or a minor plat, yes, that's when I get paid. Yeah.
He's not getting paid today, so don't bring that up. Yeah. So what we'll do today is kind of go over, and we've got some examples to show you of different plats. I know some of you all have been on the board for a while, but we'll stick these plats on the screen. And I'll be honest, the first time I ever looked at one, I'm like, what are all these lines? What do they mean? When there's ones that there's a Z on there, what does that mean? And so the intent is I wanted to have Walter come in and just really kind of go over the plats in general, but then also talk specifically about the cases that you all see, which are typically our variances for road frontage, our variances for setbacks. You all started to see a few more in regard to building limit lines, where there's maybe a 50-foot building limit line in a subdivision, and somebody is encroaching into that building limit line. We've had a couple of those within the past year. And so typically wanting to look at those cases that you all see. And so once again, Walter is, Meridian Surveying is his company here in town. He is the elected official, is the county surveyor. And his involvement with our office, typically you'll see either him or Bill Knisner, his associate, come in and do presentations before you all for the client that they've been hired by. But then there's probably a good 98% of what he does with our office you all don't typically see. And that comes into play when in your all's conditions of approval, you all put in there a minor plat application will have to be submitted to the staff. And so that's work that he does just with us that you all don't ever see. And so I wanted him to talk a little bit about that process as well. So I guess a couple of the plats, and I'll let Walter talk about these as they come up. The first one that you all see a lot are road frontage variances. So I know we just had class with Amanda, so this is fresh for her. She already knows all of this. But the road frontage requirement is only in our agricultural and conservation zoning areas. That's the one that you have to have either 150 feet or 300 feet of road frontage on a public right-of-way, depending on your parcel size or your acreage of the lot that you're trying to create. And the surveyors that do work in our county the most know these regulations. And so a lot of times when people come into our office and say, well, I want to split my lot, what are my rules? We always tell them, look, it's work that obviously has to go through a surveyor first. And so Walter is one that knows our regulations. Bob Vincent is another one that does a lot of work in the county. He knows our regs front and back. And so the regulation for that road frontage is 2.5 acres is that threshold. So 2.5 acres or less, you have to have 150 feet of road frontage. And 2.5 acres or more, you have to have 300 feet of road frontage. And so the first two plats that we'll put up here are road frontage variance applications. And this first one is one from his company. The other thing you'll note too is I've picked a couple of different plats to show you that are from different companies. And you're going to see not all of these are going to look the same. So when we put up Meridian ones, they've got to look to them. Bob Vincent's are going to look a little different, and there's a couple other companies that we've chose to use. But I guess with this one, Walter will kind of go over the parts of the plat, but this is a road frontage variance, and so you can see this has a residual tract of land. This one's a little bit more difficult to see because it's such a large parcel of land, but essentially they were creating a lot that didn't have frontage on a public right-of-way, and so they came before you all as the Board of Adjustments for a road frontage variance. One of those stipulations in those conditions of approval would have been that after your all's approval of the road frontage variance, they would have to get that minor plat approved at staff level, which we'll talk about here at the end. So I don't know if you want to talk about this one a little
And
bit.
as far as Ryan was talking about different plats, each company looking a little bit different. Within our own company, Bill, my partner, if you look at a Meridian plat I did, which is this one, and a Meridian plat that Bill did, they're just slightly different. It's just personal taste of how you like to draw some things like that. But as far as the line work and our plats, they're consistent. It's just leaders and things like that, or textiles that Bill likes, that he prefers that I don't. But it's just within our company itself. But as far as this one goes, usually,
What are we looking, can you tell us what all these lines are? Or maybe Ryan, you can.
I think he's getting there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So usually with our plats, the main boundary of the property is the heavy set line, the darkest line. Yes, that's the main right there. So in this one here, we were creating a new parcel. So that line there is slightly lighter, it's a little heavier than the other ones, but slightly lighter. So it's showing, in our instance, a new parcel being created, and these are the new lines that are being created. So Ryan, the circles that those. This is an exhibit, which is slightly different than a minor plat. Exhibits don't have to have the same amount of material or information on them that a minor plat does. So those circles, the heavyset circles, are basically the corners of the property. In the minor plat, we would show them what they were, what we found, or what we set. If we found our pins there, if we found or we set rebars, we would show those on a minor plat. But rebars. Rebars or caps. With caps or pipes. I found axles. I found stones. I found rocks. I found rifles. I found pretty much everything at the property corner. But it's,
Do you always find them? I mean, they seem to be hard to find.
sometimes they are. It depends on what the material is. In this case here, I found three of the main corners. But anyway, it's experience. I know what you're looking for, what you're trying to, what you find, stuff like that. But as far as the lines on here, Ryan, if you show the proposed residual for the existing 45-foot passway easement is to your left. Nope, too far. Right there, yeah. We show dashed lines being easements right there. And it'd be labeled, such as that right there, which shows a 40-foot existing 40-foot passway easement with arrows leading to it. So that way you know what that line is. We have an existing access easement, which in this parcel here leads all the way up to 42.
So that can be, easements can be like utility easements.
Utility easements, access easements, shared driveway easements, which is this right here would be a shared drive. But they can be utilities, they could be sewer, they could be water, they could be pedestrian, equestrian. Like over in L'Esprit, they have equestrian easements. And those will be listed on a plat or an exhibit, either one, as what their purpose is used for. And usually they show what deed it came from, what reference deed where it's recorded. Then we have other lines on here. You see the overhead utilities. Those are just items that are on the property. Those are not survey related. They're just showing you what's on the property itself. Then we have the driveway, which is just, again, it's labeled. That's the thing you should look for is when you look at the exhibits, they should be labeled as what they are. Right there, yeah. So on this one, this one here was a small one because if I showed the entire property, it was 160 some odd acres. It had been really big to show the entire thing with a small one. But Ryan has another example of one where he shows the entire property, which Mr. Vincent did, that you can see the entire property. And it has this, the new parcel they're creating is related to it. But this one being so big, it would take up a big sheet, or it would be so small that you wouldn't be able to really read anything and make any sense of it.
Is that 2.5 acres or 2,500?
2.5.
Yep.
Well, that's not that big.
But compared to the entire farm, if I would show the entire farm, it would be a small little block.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to see the detail as,
Yeah, because then the residual of what's left after creating this tract will be 140 acres, 140.02 left.
yeah.
So typically you'll see the proposed tract, what he's creating, and then the residual tract of the farm. The other thing these will have on it is a location map. So a lot of these, and I guess that's required because it's pretty much on all of them, is you'll have a location map that'll give you an idea of where this is at, similar to what we do on our presentations. You'll have his seal here, and then what the plat is. So you'll see different things here, such as this is a variance exhibit. You'll see ones that say, exhibit only. You'll see some that say, a lot of the ones that you all are going to see at your level are exhibits.
Exhibits, so yeah.
And then we'll get into the very end to show kind of what that final product is of when he has to come in and get our approval before he then takes it to the deed room to record. And that's going to be the minor plat. So this is one particular variance that you're going to see, a road frontage variance. Another example, and this is the one that he was talking to where you'll see the entire parcel. This is one that's, told you these were going to look a little different based on the surveyor. So this is one from Bob Vinzan. It's an exhibit for a road frontage variance, and you can see this is their entire lot. They were creating this new tract right here. So that is tract 2, which would be just a little over 2 acres. And then the proposed residual of tract 1 is going to be 37 acres. So this has no road frontage on the public road, which would be 42. So they came before you all back in 2024 and asked for a road frontage variance, which was ultimately approved. Them getting the approval that day for the road frontage variance doesn't automatically grant them the tract. That's where the minor plat process, they would have to come before our office, and we'll talk a little bit about that procedure here in a second. But this is another example.
Right. As far as you see the difference between mine and Bob's is he doesn't put circles at all the main corners, indicating the break points in the property lines. The adjoiner lines, mine are usually dashed. Mr. Vincent doesn't. He makes a solid line. So it's the same information. It's just drawn slightly differently. And again, that comes down to preference from each company to the company.
So what kind of software do you use? Is this like just CAD type?
Yes, AutoCAD run by with Carlson.
So is it CAD with like, when you put in the geographic, whatever, the minutes and degrees and all that kind of stuff?
So yeah, I'll bring it. So we'll go out in the field. We locate any corners we find. And then we'll take that, I'll go in the office and I'll draw up each individual parcel and all the adjoiners, and I try to put the puzzles together. So theoretically, they're all supposed to fit together exactly.
The minutes, degrees, seconds, all those numbers?
When I draw the line and tell it to annotate it, it will annotate what I tell it to.
Oh, you do it manually?
Yes. Yes. So typically, like I said, we'll go out to start the procedure. I go out and I'll survey the property, find any corners I can find. Sometimes I find all of them. Sometimes I find one. Sometimes I find half of them. So then I take all the adjoiners and put together the puzzle in a theoretical world. everybody who has a property should match exactly with your neighbors. It doesn't work that way a lot of times. Close, but a lot of times it doesn't quite work that way. So my job is to interpret the property lines, not ownership, and just interpret where the property lines are supposed to be at. So this one here, Mr. Vincent probably went out and surveyed the entire property for the exhibit. And then he met with the people in the field and said, okay, where do you want to put your new property at? And they showed him where they want to put the new 2 acres. And he drew it up as an exhibit, but not saying that what we're going to be setting or it's not the final product, but this is what we're attempting to try to do upon approval.
So the final product would be after then you put new.
Once you guys approve it, then they got 30 days. In the meantime, we'll get the minor plat created, so at the end of 30 days, they can go to planning and zoning for their approval. So it has to meet their standards. And once it meets their standards, then it gets signed off by them. We get to our client, then they go get it recorded.
And when do you put the pins in the ground?
Typically, right after we get the minor plat done. I like to wait just a little bit afterwards, just in case planning and zoning has, which rarely ever happens, but just in off sense. If I go and set a corner, and they say, we'd like to change or tweak just a little bit for whatever reason. I don't want to have a corner sitting here and then 5 feet away have another corner setting. So I like to wait till it's finalized and done and signed off and stamped. And that's when I set the corners. And usually it's done pretty quickly right after the minor plat's done.
And he waits that 30 days because there's obviously that 30-day appeal period after your all's decision. If there's somebody that spoke in opposition that may be aggrieved that wants to, to appeal that decision of you all to circuit court, they can do that. So that's typically why we wait that 30 days. Also, 30 days later is when you all approve the minutes. That's kind of your all's board's final action. So once you all approve the minutes, we as staff then send out all that approval paperwork to the applicant, which is the certificate of land use that says, your variance was approved or conditional use permit was approved. That then gets recorded in the deed room on the land. And so those typically run with the property. The variances, obviously, if you're creating a lot, are going to run with the property. But conditional use permits, like those short-term rentals that you all had today, those all run with the property. Other than the ones we've been putting the stipulations in of upon transfer or sale, that doesn't run with the property because it's something special like a short-term rental or a home occupation. But in these instances that Walter is dealing with stuff, that's going to run with the land, obviously, and creating a new tract. And then you can see where that would then so this is all a big process. So it comes before you all. He comes in and does his work. The minor plat gets approved. It gets recorded in the deed room. Once that gets approved, it goes to the PVA that gives it a parcel ID that then becomes taxed and all that stuff. So you all are kind of the first body to make that first domino fall,
Right.
to then generate all those other dominoes that ultimately result in a new tract of land, a new taxable parcel ID, and things of that nature.
So, and another thing about your corner question is when we set them, say if Mr. Vincent went out and set the corners on this right here, and within that 30 days, his client got sued. He came in front of it, and it got denied at that point. Then he has 4 corners out there to nothing, basically. So him setting them, then if I come out later on as a surveyor and I'm dragging down the line, and I find 2 Mr. Vincent's corners, and there's no recorded plat showing that property, I'm going to be sitting around scratching my head trying to figure out why are these here. So that's why I like to set, and I'm sure most surveyors do, wait till my final minor plat is finalized before you set the corners. Then you know they're good and they're set and they're done.
So is the software evolving? It's like, I can do like, air tags or I lost my phone type thing, and it knows when I get like 2 feet from my phone that, okay, you're there. So you don't have that kind of software for surveys? It doesn't.
Well, I create nodes or points, and then I put coordinates on them. And coordinate systems are completely different. It can be assumed. It could be Kentucky North. It could be Kentucky Single Zone. It can be anything you want it to be, basically. Or it could be related to the plat itself. So people talk about coordinates and stuff like that, and they want GPS. Usually they're referring to lat and long. We don't deal with lat and longs. Latitude and longitudinal coordinates.
Yeah.
We don't deal with those.
But you don't deal with those.
No, we deal with a coordinate system within that.
So those, now I'm really confused. So the minutes, degrees, seconds that you see like there,
Mm-hmm.
that's not log, is that?
That's not latitude and longitude, no. That's a direction and a distance.
Oh,
It's a bearing and a distance, northeast, southeast, southwest, and a distance.
that's interesting. Okay.
So these first two that we've showed you are road frontage variances. So very common that you all hear those. This next one we're going to look at is one by Todd Willett. He doesn't do a whole lot of work around here, but this is a boundary survey. This was for a side setback variance on Rollington Road that the Board of Adjustments heard, I think back in early '24. This one was a good one to show just because he kind of colored in where they were building on to. They were building an attached garage. So thing about a garage is that's considered an accessory structure. So you all typically hear things for, accessory structure size and location and things like that. You all also hear accessory dwelling units, which sound very similar, but accessory dwelling units would have living space in them. So they are building on a attached garage. And so a detached garage, detached accessory structure, if you call it could be a shed, it could be a whatever. If it's detached, it has to be 5 feet off the property line, on the sides and the rear, and it's got to be 5 feet off of the main structure. If it's attached to the house, it then has to follow the setbacks of the primary dwelling. And so depending on what zoning class they are in, it could be 7 feet, it could be 10 feet, it depends on the zoning class, which is why in our staff reports, we always attach that sheet that shows you all, and we'll highlight, this is a side setback variance, this is what's permitted, this is what they're asking for. So when they come before you all of variances are dimensional in number. Could be a location variance, but for the most part, it's a number. So let's just say, they were asking for, sorry, this is very small. So they're asking to be 5 feet off the property line. So I don't have the particular case pulled up, but let's just say that the requirement was 7 feet. The side setback was 7 foot. They're asking for 5 feet, so they're asking you all for a 2 foot variance, essentially, to be off the property line. So Mr. Willett drew up this. You can see at the top, he's got boundary survey up here. He's got the location map, and then he's got it colored in orange, and these numbers are very hard to read, but you can see where his measurements show that it's going to be 5 feet off the property line.
On this one, Mr. Willett, interesting enough, I worked with him back in the 90s for 4 or 5 years. And my style is close to his, just because when I started getting into CAD and learning how to draw stuff, I learned it basically from Todd. This one here is a boundary survey. So this right here is just a boundary survey around the property. It's a boundary survey. So so the first two that we looked at were exhibits. They didn't have to be complete surveys. They just had to be just enough, basically, to get on the property to show you what was happening. This one here is a boundary survey where Mr. Will went out, located the house, located the existing structures, located the corners, and he also has a list in the legend what he actually found on each of the corners. So he said he found a 1/2-inch pipe, he found a 1/2-inch rebar at the cap, Talbert. He found a 1/2-inch rebar, and he set one with 3444 Willett, which
He is using the circles.
yes. Yeah, and he's using the bearings. Yeah, north, no coordinates. He's using bearings. Yeah, and so that's actually a boundary survey. So he's drawn it up and showed you what he's found on the property. Again, if you look at it, his main boundary around the property is heavy set, like mine are. The adjoiners, which go off to the sides, are slightly lighter lines at the corners. And you see he also has it listed on there, the easements are dashed with a descriptor and a leader going to them. So you can see what they're supposed to be, they should be labeled. So that way you see exactly what everything is, which is what Todd has done. He's labeled a house. He's got dimensions to the house, to the property line. That way you can see how it is reference to the setbacks and things like that. And then he's shown the grade area is the new addition they're putting in. And then, like you said, Ryan said where he colored in where the setback for the side yard is supposed to be, as he put on there what it should be and what they're proposing to have done. Now, in this one here, if the county surveyor had a role in plats, I would send this back to Mr. Willett for one reason only. He doesn't have a north arrow on it. And that's one of our regulations as a surveyor, is one of the things you have to have on a plat is a north arrow. And there's no north arrow on this or on his vicinity map, which it's not a big deal. It happens. So I would just send it back to him and say, Todd, you need to put a north arrow on it, resubmit it. But since we don't have a county surveyor, my role as county surveyor is not that, then it's just, it needs to be on there, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect what they're trying to do with the exhibit here for the variance.
He mentioned the easements, so you can see he's got these labeled here. He talked about the dash lines. So we've got a water main easement, electric and telephone easement right here. And he's also got the building limit line shown. So this particular subdivision had a 50-foot building limit line when it was created. So he's got that marked. We'll see on the next one where they're encroaching into the building limit line. So just note that. The other thing he's got on here, which a lot of surveyors, and I don't know if this is a difference because this is a boundary survey, some of the other plats you saw, either, Bob Vincennes had a signature on it, but it didn't have his stamp. The first one was just, a survey. It didn't have anything. Once it gets final approved by us, okay, those then have to have the signature of the surveyor, his stamp on them, like he's got here, showing where he's, certified to do that within the state of Kentucky. Those are all things on the final plat that we're actually going to stamp and they're going to record in the deed room. Those have to be on there. So Sandy handles all of our minor plats and plat consolidations in the office. It's a job I used to do back when I was a senior planner. I got to know them so well. But so typically she will take these, and they may give her one copy. Okay, they may give her all 3 copies if they're pretty confident in their work, but they really only have to give her one copy initially. She sends those out to agencies and does all our thing, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But then once she goes, hey, Walter, this plat's good to go, he needs to bring in 3 copies that are stamped and signed, hard copies.
Right.
We then stamp those. I sign them. We keep 1. We give them 2 because one's going to go to the deed room and then one's going to be left. Some surveyors bring in 5. The minimum is 3.
I normally send in 6.
Yeah.
What I normally send in is 6.
They can be any size too. Like sometimes they're 8 by 11, sometimes 3 by 1.
Yeah.
8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, 18 by 20, 18 by 24, and 24 by 36.
I have a question about the easements. How do they, does the developer come to you and say, okay, when we're doing this subdivision, we need to put in a water and utility and electric easement? Do you guys do that? I mean, how does that happen?
So when a subdivision comes forward and gets approved at the planning commission, they have to go to what's called a record plat. Very similar to a minor plat, but it's an entire subdivision. They'll a lot of times come in phases. So larger subdivisions like Norton Commons, Hamlet, for instance, is in their 3rd phase now or something like that. So they'll bring in a phase and they'll have all of those easements on that plat with there's legal jargon that they use to record those easements. Those get stamped and recorded in the deed room, and those are then, I'm guessing that's how you all find out where those
we
easements.
pull the plat up.
Do you approve those then, or how does that, so you have?
Yeah, we have to approve those.
And
So-
lately, I've been seeing a lot when I send out to the agencies, specifically the water agencies, that they'll come back and say, you need to draw
Oh, so that,
draw it on there, get it on there, figure it out. Because water's been, especially at this stage, I've been seeing a lot more issues with that lately.
Yeah. Local water company likes to have their own easements.
what
E-
about
e-
fiber, like the internet lines?
That normally falls within the right of way of the road.
And they never respond.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So if the easement doesn't fall within the right of way of the road. Yeah. So this road here, Burlington, it's probably a 60-foot right of way. Again, that's something that Todd should put on his plat. But again, here it didn't really affect the exhibit. But if the easement doesn't fall if the utility doesn't fall within the easement of the road, of the right of way of the road, that's when they add an additional easement. Like this one here is a 12-foot water main easement. Because that water line does not fall within the right of way of the road. So in order to get the water line through, it has to be on somebody's property, which they have to grant an easement to allow them to put the water line on the property.
What about culverts and shoulders and stuff like that? Does highway department get those from you guys, or how does that?
Those are typically in and there was a plat, I almost pulled it and brought it, but one of them was creating a lot on like North Buckeye. Somebody was creating a lot. This was probably earlier this year. I think it was actually this year. And they had a culvert on their plat, but typically those are going to be in the right of way.
Yes, normally those are in the right of way. And then it depends if it's a state road, and KYTC will tell you where you can put it. They have their own regulations and stipulations about size and, and things like that. And they'll come out and cite it for you. But
They're also noticed.
now, another thing is, Brian was talking about, this right here is a boundary survey, which Todd has to have his land surveyor certificate, which he has right there. He signed it, he stamped it. The exhibits don't have to be stamped, and they don't have to be signed unless you want to. An exhibit is a working drawing. It's not a document that's being created to show the actual boundary of the property, or it's not transferring property from one person to the next. It's just an exhibit.
How do I know the difference? It's like, how do I know this is a boundary survey?
It needs to be listed on there. Yeah, it needs to be listed on there, yes. So if it's listed in an exhibit, it's not a final product. It's not a
This other one, variance
exhibit, right. So a working drawing, an exhibit, things like that, don't have to be signed by the surveyor. Some surveyors do, some surveyors don't. I don't sign them. Mr. Fazan signs them. But I know I've listened to a couple of meetings before, and I've had people come in and say, well, it's not valid because it's not signed and stamped by the surveyor. But it's an exhibit. It's a working drawing. It's not meant to be a final product. So those, honestly, if it's an exhibit, I don't have to show the sidelines, the bearings, the distance on them, because it's not really pertinent to the drawing itself. But we do like to show them anyway. But it's just a working drawing it's working towards its final product.
So on these boundary surveys, do you guys ever get sued by landowners where there's a dispute on the boundary and they're saying that you made a mistake or whatever? I mean,
If that ever happens, then I always tell them, when I go and do the boundary survey on somebody's property, I always tell them, if they think it's going to be an issue with the neighbor, I tell them, here's your drawing, here's your boundary. If your neighbor doesn't like it, tell them to get their own surveyor. Have them come out and survey it. And if they come up with the same thing I came up with, then it's sort of a moot point. If they found something slightly different and they just agree with what I've done, then we too can sit down as professionals and figure out what's going on. Yes.
So this was a side setback variance. So we've looked at road frontage variances that you all hear. We've looked at side setback variances. We've talked about the different types of plats so far. We've looked at exhibits that they've shown. This is a boundary survey. We're now going to look at a third type, and that is, this is encroaching into that building limit line that we talked about, where you've got the 50-foot, and a lot of these will happen on corner lots. Are notorious for having issues with this. Also, when you see a lot come in before you all that is like the last lot in a subdivision subdivisions maybe been around for 12 or 15 years, and there's one lot in there that nobody ever wanted to take the chance of building on it because it had a weird slope to it, or there's a reason why the original developer didn't build on it, and then somebody goes, well, I'm going to buy this lot and build a house on it. So then they have to start coming in and asking for all of these variances and so on. So you'll typically see these on corner lots. And so this was one you all saw here probably just a month or two ago that had to do with this boundary limit line. And so this neighborhood had a 50-foot boundary limit line, and you can see where they were encroaching into that area just by a little bit. But because of that, they had to come before you all and ask for a variance. So once again, this is an exhibit he talked about already. Bob does sign his. We've talked about that. I don't know if there's anything else on here you want to.
Again, you can see he labels the easements. He labels them on the easement itself instead of a leader with the arrow pointing to it. And you can see that just different line types and different line weights. And his main boundary, again, is sort of darker than the other lines, which show the boundary of the property, which is the main subject of it.
And these boundaries are from the middle of the road or the edge of the road, right? I forget how the setback.
The right of way there is theoretically 30 feet from the center line of the road.
From the center line.
Yes. Not every road is built in the center of the right of way. The Borwick Farms is supposed to be straight. If you drive down any road in Borwick Farms, it does this. But it's technically supposed to be straight. But, you know, in these newer subdivisions, if I walk out there and I go to the center line of King River Drive and I pace over 30 feet, I'm going to be pretty close to where the property line is supposed to be at. But again, he's got them labeled, different line types, different line weights. It looks different, but it has all the same information that my plat would have or somebody else's would.
So those are pretty much the three that you all are going to see the most of. This one, not as often, but you all have seen a couple of these within the past year. So once again, as you get these subdivisions where there's that one lot left that has all these certain issues with it, you'll see these more. But a lot of times, these aren't necessarily asking for a variance from one of our regulations. This is asking for a variance from something that was in the recorded plat when the neighborhood was developed, the building limit line. It could be the building limit line in the zoning area, but for the most part, that's what you're going to see there. Now we'll get into the minor plat and plat consolidation. So these are things that you all aren't necessarily going to hear, but these are things of, in the conditions of approval, you all state this has to be applied and approved at staff level for a minor plat. That's what then these guys have to do after your all's meeting's said and done. So the first one we'll look at is one that he's got here is a minor plat. And so a minor plat is where you're creating new lots. So you've got one big lot, you're creating a new lot. Our minor plat rule in planning and zoning is that you can create 2 new lots every 5 years. If you choose to do more than that, you either fall into you're creating a subdivision, or you can go before the planning commission, ask for a waiver of the minor plat rule. So if somebody wants to create maybe one additional lot, or let's say they've created 2 new ones, and then 2 years later they try to create another one, which would be that you're not allowed to do that. They could go ask a waiver from that. Typically, you're not going to see somebody go and ask for a waiver of the minor plat rule when they're wanting to create 8 new lots. Because now you're getting into a
major subdivision, yes. Yeah.
And so typically you're only going to see that waiver applied to when somebody's maybe trying to create another one. And once again, similar to you all, they have to have a justification as to why they're doing this. They've got 3 sons. They were only able to create, right. So, you know, they've got 3 sons, they've created 2 new lots, and now the one son feels left out, and so they come and plead their case before the planning commission. You all won't hear those, planning commission hears those, but you all will, dictate on certain situations that they've got to get a minor plat approved. So this plat, once again, a little bit different. I'll let Walter explain, but you can see here, it's delineated as a minor plat.
And again, the main boundary of the property is heavy set lines. The new lines we created, which would be Ryan, if you go right there, that's new lines there. We created that way. They're heavy, but they're not quite as heavy as the main boundary. And if you keep following around the L10, L9, L8, L7, L6, those are for a line table, meaning that a line table. What it is if you look at L10, and that refers you up to the table, and it tells you the bearing and distance to that line. And the reason why I did that is because if I try to type in or show, as you can see, where the bearings are on the other ones, the bearing distances are, how big they are, I really can't put those on those lines without really cluttering up the map. So I use line tables to make it easier to see what's going on. Anyway, it's just not a lot of stuff that's in the way. And if you see just right to the right of L10, there's a very faint line with Z's going through it, which means there used to be a boundary line there that separated the track to the right from the track to the left. And we consolidated those, we took that line away and consolidated them in together. So that's what a Z line is. You refer to somebody calling it a Z line it's a boundary line that's being taken away and being deleted. And on this one, you see I got the zoning line. Since the property was dual zone, I showed a dual zone line going through it. Right there, and that's a different line type, different line weight. Just sort of distinction. So if you don't, when you do a plat, I like when I do mine, you don't want all the lines look exactly the same, because then it becomes, what is this, what is that, what is that? So I try to, on our plats at least, make them slightly different so they sort of stand out from each other. If that makes sense. And on here, you see I got the north arrow. I got right up to the upper left-hand corner. It tells you what I found and what I set, what all the marks and the circles mean. So I set caps, I found bars, I found stones. So it tells you what was found, and that's on the minor plat. So you have to, on the minor plat, you tell them what you found in the field. Joiners, you list the joiners. It's in a subdivision, so you got lots 13, 14, 15, the names of them. Since the minor plat in Oldham County, we put the D book, parcel number, and the zone. That's sort of a standard that we do with Oldham County plats. And I do with all my plats, minor plats, is I put all that information on it. Henry County, Shelby County, Jefferson as well. Anything else in this one, Ryan, you think?
So the minor plat process, and once again, this is after you all have approved and everything. Once again, Sandy is the one who does these in our office. So a surveyor will come in with a minor plat. They'll have a minor plat application. That process takes about a week. So we send that out to all the agencies in the county. And with minor plats, we just have one big group email. We don't try to figure out, oh, is this in Ballardsville Fire District? We just send it out to everybody and say, here's a plat. They're creating 2 new lots from one. So this one is creating, so this would just be creating 1 new lot from an existing lot. And so in the email, we would say this, this is where this is located. They're creating 1 new lot. Please send us any comments by this specific date. And so usually what I would do, and I'm guessing Sandy does this the same way because I trained her, is she'll send that email out and give them a week to respond. So we don't take into account weekends and things like that. So typically if we got one today, I would say send your comments to me by, well, I wouldn't do next Thursday because it's Thanksgiving, but in a perfect world where there's no holidays, I would be, get me your comments by next Thursday at 4:30. Any comments that they may have, most people will either not respond or they'll respond, I don't have any issues. If somebody does have an issue, like let's say the water company writes back and says, hey, needs to be a water easement notated on there, we would send the surveyor a comment and say, hey, you need to get the water easement on there, or talk to Russ Rose at Oldham County Water to figure out what you need to do. Because right now this is still just a working document. Until we tell him it's good to go and all the agencies are fine with it, he doesn't get us the final copy. And so you can see where this one, he doesn't have a signature on it. He doesn't have his stamp on it. The next one I'll show you does have all that stuff. But this one is still kind of a working document. Once we're good, we'll tell him. He shows back up with 3 documents with stamps and signatures on them. Then I put my stamp on it, sign it, and he's got 1 year to record it in the deed room. This is something a little difficult here. There's some communities that actually walk them over after I stamp it and sign it. They walk over to the deed room and record it. Here we don't do that. We give them 1 year from the date that it's signed. So it may never get recorded for some reason, which is the difficult, is we've got it, which is why when you look at our mapping software a lot on GIS, you'll see where the lines are not right. Because sometimes we don't ever know, because I like to call this the Bermuda Triangle. When stuff leaves our office and goes to the clerk's office and then goes to the PVA, it then gets lost somewhere in this triangle of buildings to where it never gets back to our GIS guy to carve in the lot. That's something we need to work on between all 3 parties there to be able to do a better job of that. Matt Toller, our GIS guy, used to work in Scott County, and they would actually walk the person over to the deed room and record it. Now, we do that with record plats. When we were talking about record plats and a neighborhood comes in, when we sign it that day to record a record plat for a new subdivision, we walk over to the deed room with them and they physically record it that day. Minor plats, they have an entire year from the date, and you'll see on
Is
the...
that all paper? The deed room is all paper-based?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they're old school.
Now, and,
I have a question about this up here. So
sure.
Tract 1, I'm trying to understand Tract 1 versus Tract 2. And so it says there's tract 1 is tract B plus B minus A.
Right. So what we're doing now, this is a consolidation. So this right here is a consolidation plat. So track 1 is the new track we're creating. So if you look around,
The new one.
that's the new one that we're creating. And we're creating it by adding track B, which is lower right-hand corner. And we're adding to that track D, which is to the left of that. And we're taking away track A. Now, keep in mind, if track A and D used to be part of the farm.
Okay.
And I delineate them between track A and track B because it goes through the new proposed track 2, basically.
I see. So the new track 2. Oh, I see.
So track 2 is now is track A plus track C.
And when this is all done, that'll all come off, and it'll just be track 1 and track 2.
It'll get recorded like this,
Okay.
but the new tracks will be track 1, the big track 1, and the big track 2.
Track 2.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yeah, so this one's a little difficult in the fact that there were some consolidations along with creating
new
a new
lines.
lot.
Yes.
So sometimes they get very complicated and
Yes.
very messy.
As far as real quick on the recording part, now Oldham County does it in 1 year. In Henry County, it doesn't matter. I was in deed room a couple years ago doing deed research in Henry County, and a lady came in to record a plat. It was done by a gentleman who passed away several years ago. Yes, and they recorded the plat because there's no stipulation on the time frame. He passed away several years ago, and they recorded his plat. So I actually had an attorney sitting next to me. I said, "Well, who is since he's now passed away? Is there something issue with this plat? Who is now responsible for this plat?" As a surveyor who stamped something, I am responsible for that plat and the information on it until I'm no longer standing upright, until I pass away. It's my responsibility. I'm responsible for that until I pass away. Since he's already gone, if there's something of an issue with it, who now is responsible for it? And he's like, I don't know. But I like the 1 year thing. It gives you time to get it done. And then like sometimes people don't, like Ryan said, don't get it recorded. I've had a client here in Oldham County who I created a plat for him. He waited 1.5 years to get it recorded. You can't. Now we got to resubmit it again to get stamps again, all over again from Oldham County for the planning zoning.
This one here is a consolidation plat. So consolidation, so if minor plats are creating a new lot, and the rule is no more than 2 lots per every 5 years, consolidation plat is you've got 2 lots and you're going down to 1. So you can see where those aren't going to be. We actually kind of like those. Those don't have to go out to the agency. So when they come in with a consolidation, they give it to Sandy, and Sandy can immediately bring it over to me if I'm not doing anything, and I can stamp it as long as everything is good and they've got the stamps on it and signatures. A consolidation plat is essentially you're taking 2 tracts and you're moving them down into 1. So this is a consolidation plat that he did. And you can go ahead.
so what happens with property tax? I'm just curious. Do they go from 2 property tax bills to 1 then? Is that reappraised?
I'm guessing possibly. That would be a PVA question, but
Yeah, that would be a PVA question. But there's a lot of times where there's multiple parcels, even if they're separate parcels, and they'll send them 1 tax bill. That gets very confusing from our end because what they'll do is they'll just, instead of sending 3 different tax bills for 3 different parcels, even though they're 3 different tracts, they'll just consolidate them all into 1. So if you look on our GIS software a lot, you'll see 22-00-313 is the lot number A, B, C. And it could be 3 different lots. They just consolidate them all into 1. So it gets a little confusing, but that would ultimately be a tax question on how they do that. So
on this one, you see Mr. Fitzann, the Z line, that's very hard to see, but runs through the middle of the property. He's got the Z's on them, so it's Z'd out. So he's taking that line there, which separated those 2, track C from track B, and he's making them 1 big piece. Now, this may look a little familiar because this is Mr. Bowen's property. He was just in here today.
yeah. So the guy that was just in here for the table.
And we're talking about creating the minor plat around the house to make it its own separate parcel. He's hired me to do that. So,
Nice.
but yeah, it's again, it looks like Bobby's stuff is similar to mine, just slightly different. but it has the same information on it, just different line types with different line weights.
And so you can see this one. So once again, he consolidated these into one big track. This one was a final submittal. So you can see Bob's got his signature, Bob's got his stamp, and then this is the stamp that we put on there. And so this one was approved by Jim Urban, the old director, back in 2021. You can see it was approved on March 23rd, and then it says void if not recorded within 1 year of the date. So we sign it, we date it, and then that's how they know what that year date is. And so that's the part that I do. So they have to bring in those 3 copies. Once again, we keep one, he gets one goes to the deed room. That's the minimum. Sometimes they bring in 5 if they want to really put me to work and see if my red ink goes out on my stamp. But that's kind of our final action. After that, it goes to the deed room. The deed room goes to the PVA, and all that stuff gets established.
Right.
So,
And I think as far as like the county surveyor, like in other counties, these plats would also come to the county surveyor. So say if they didn't get to record, like the gentleman who I was talking about earlier, who didn't record the plat, it was stamped and approved by planning and zoning, but he never got it recorded. And a surveyor goes out behind me and starts finding where I set my pins on the new property lines, and they're going to sit around, they're going to figure out what's going on. If the county surveyor had a row in Oldham County, you could call the county surveyor, hey, I'm working on blank 123 Main Street. I found some pins. I don't know what they're referring to. Do you have any unrecorded minor plats? And then you go through the list and look for them. Oh, yes, I got one here. So then you can send it to them. That way, it makes some sense why something's out there. I spent a number of times scratching my head. I found those before on plats, corners that weren't recorded. And I'm trying to figure out why on earth are they here? What is their purpose for? And then talking to like the joiners or the person who owned the property. Oh, I was going to do a minor plat, but I changed my mind. Oh, and that makes all sense.
these last 2 we'll look at that he's provided. These are 2 more. These are just done in different areas.
This is Jefferson County plat. Jefferson County requires a whole lot of information on theirs, a lot more than Oldham County does. They want a legend showing what all the line work means, as you see on the left-hand side. They want a purpose. They want a karst terrain note. They want a floodplain note. They have a certificate of approval on the right-hand side. And again, it's the same thing there, is you have to get it recorded by a certain date.
These are the other things too, real quick. Certificate of approval. So some surveyors do put that on ours to where I don't have to do the stamp. I can just sign in that area. That's one of those things to where surveyors that do work, and I don't think Walter's ever done this. I'll blame it on Bill and say he has. But you have to check and be sure that they haven't just, copy and pasted and have the wrong thing on there. Be like, hey, this one's wrong. It's got the Louisville Metro certificate approval on it. Occasionally that happens. But some surveyors do that type of certificate approval. So you won't always necessarily see the plat approved stamp with my name if they've got that, which throws the deed room off sometimes.
No, I have a question. So we're thinking of putting some of our properties into a trust. And I said this one is in a revocable trust, which is what ours would be. Do we need to do this to move it from our name into the trust? Is that something that we need to do?
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, if you move it into a trust, you could just deed it to your trust.
Trust.
Right.
Change the deed.
Just change the deed, right.
We don't have to do the
No, this right here is not because of the trust. They're creating 3 new lots, and the trust owned the property, and they were creating three new lots here.
That would be work of an attorney who is far more expensive than
Right.
both me and Walter combined.
Right.
So, in Jefferson, they want the pavement width. They want you to show the width from the center line of the road to the property line. I've worked on a gentleman in Jefferson County once where I measured the road width at 17 feet. The paved road width 17 feet. It was not 18 feet as required in Jefferson County, and they were going to make him widen the road a foot, 300 feet down to his property before they would grant the minor plat because it didn't meet their standards.
So did you get involved in this? So we live right by the Oldham County, Jefferson County line, and there was a dispute on what county. There was like 10 homes that were right on the line. Half of the home or half of the property was in Jefferson County, half was in Oldham County, and there was a dispute about which county taxes the property. And it's like, well, where's the bedroom? I think that's how they decide. If the master bedroom is in Jefferson County, it gets taxed in Jefferson County.
I've run that before too, on the same thing. And I did a plat in Oldham County where they want to know where the bedroom was to see what county it would be setting in.
Right.
Right. And it's based on where the master bedroom is.
So you get into that.
Yes, I've done it once. But yes, it's had happened before.
We deal with that more from the school perspective because where the bedrooms are at dictates where they go to school.
schools are.
And there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to build a house here, but my bedroom for my kids is over there. And so, yeah, so we get into it more with the school basis. I mean, especially we just had the case there on Mint Spring Branch
Yeah.
where
Yeah, I remember
half of the property was in Jefferson and half was in Oldham. They were building the ADU in the Oldham side. The primary house was going to be in the Jefferson side. So the school board guy is very explicit and tells people, you know, the kids in Oldham County will go to Oldham County schools. And it makes it difficult. I mean, you've got, I mean, and to get to Mint Spring Branch Road now is not as easy as it used to be when Old Chamberlain Lane
Right.
used to, you know.
Yes.
So it's, you know, who's going to handle, you know, fire protection, police protection, garbage pickup. I mean, it's all, it gets,
One of my
it gets,
points we really need to connect Lock Lane and Chamberlain Lane. I mean, that is like, it's a no-brainer, but.
yeah. Anything else on this one?
No, I just want to show you what you're going to see a lot of Oldham County, obviously Oldham County exhibits. I just want to show you a couple other counties, what they require and their stuff. This is a Henry County one. And you need, they require a lot of stuff. On this one here in Henry County, they require you go around and get agency signatures. You have to go to the actual agency itself to get their signatures. So I don't send the plat to the director of planning and zoning, and then they email it out to all the agencies. Either I or my client has to go to each one of them, health, water, road, and power, and get the agency to sign off on it. So you'll see the signature blocks are health department certification, certificate of availability of utility services, water services, road, stuff like that. So I had to get everyone to sign off on that. And also on this one in Henry County, there's a certificate of ownership.
Oh, yeah.
In Oldham, here in Oldham, in order to submit a minor plat, the owner has to sign the application. So that covers. I mean, we can put it on an Oldham County plat if you want to, if Ryan really wants us to, if you think it's necessary. But the application has to be signed by the owner, so they actually know what's going on with their property. But
Now, record plats here are very similar to this format. So record plats, the new subdivisions that get created, those are very similar to this. They have all of these certification statements that then all these other agencies have to sign, the owner, all. So record plats look very similar to this for us. And those are on, you know, those are going to be very large. They actually have to provide like Mylar type copies and things like that. So those are very similar to this from the record plat perspective. So,
yeah, it's similar to this, and also in Henry County they require that you, on the left-hand side there, for any kind of division of agricultural land, I have to go back to 1991 and state how many divisions have been done. You're allowed so many depending on the size of the property, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a lot of stuff.
record plat wise too. I mean, and
There's a lot
once
on
again,
those.
there's a lot on there, but this is our time of the year for record plats, because if you follow along and the planning commission, when they approve subdivisions, the school board dictates how many building permits they're allowed per year based on school capacity standards, which no other county in Kentucky has anything like this. But when kind of the great flight out of Jefferson County started to occur, when people didn't want to have their children bused all over the county and stuff, and they started moving out to Oldham, they wanted to make sure the schools didn't become overcrowded. And so they instituted the school capacity standard and regulation, which has stayed in our regs ever since. And right now it sits at the max you can get per year is 35 building permits per year. Now, if they're going to schools that are over capacity, which
When
really...
you say you, that's a developer? Or like, when you say you?
Well, so the school board dictates the number, and then the developer is only allowed to get 35 building permits per year, if that's what but once again, if you're going to an area where the schools are I won't say overcrowded because they're not right now, but if they're, depending on who the serving schools are at, they could actually give a lower number. Or if there's other developments that have been approved that are all going to that school, and so like in Crestwood, so obviously a lot of developments, you've got Clore Station that's been approved. If another subdivision were to come in, the school board could technically say, we're only going to allow you to have 18 building permits per year, because over the course of time, as families move in and families have kids in school and the school age, they've got this crazy calculation that dictates that number. So they will give us that number. So record plats, what people will do, developers will do, is when they come to record, they'll come at the end of a calendar year. So they'll come in December to do their record plat for their subdivision, which means they get that number of permits this calendar year, and then January 1, they get an additional number. So if the number is 35, they get 35 permits in December, and then they get 35 permits in January 1. So right out of the gate, they've got 70 houses that they can start building on. They do that in order to kind of get around that. It still is far less than what you can do in other counties that don't have anything, because they could, if they were approved for, let's say, 150 home subdivision in other counties, they could get 150 building permits that day and start on them.
Can't they also just sell half of the subdivision to another affiliated company?
Well, but the subdivision itself would still have the stipulation on how many building permits per year.
Oh, okay.
So they could,
can't create
yeah,
another
so they can't,
subdivision or
yeah,
whatever.
because it would still, that next,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's a good thought, though. We'll bleep that out for any builders that want to try to pull that one. But yeah, so that's something with record plats. This is kind of our time of year that people are wanting to come to record with their plans, because they get those building permit allotments and they start over January 1.
How many developers do we have? Subdivision developers do we have?
I mean, in Oldham, there's 6, 7, 8. I mean, 10. I mean,
Big
there's
ones.
some private. You've got Pulte still is building, Fisher Homes, Elite Homes out at Sanctuary Falls, and then you've got some smaller. Walt Shum obviously builds out here. The Joneses are kind of developers, builders. Billy Delker with Key Homes is a kind of a local builder developer, and then you've got
Do
some
they count
smaller ones.
apartments too? Like apartment
So apartments get 75 per year, no matter what. And so a few years ago, they redid the regs to say apartments can get 75 units per year. And so that's just kind of automatic. So yesterday, for instance, at TRC, they're proposing an apartment building down here on 146, kind of as you go past the jail. It's only going to have 5 units in it, but the school board says you get 75 permits per year. So they can get all theirs and do their building automatically. But if you have a 500 unit apartment complex, you can only get 75 units per year. Which I will say is when people come in to meet with us, that is something that it's always a question of how quick people are able to build here. And especially with production type builders, large apartment complexes, a lot of them maybe don't come back because they can't build as fast as they'd like to build. And especially bank financing too goes into it now. We've had a lot of people talk about how bank financing, they only want to finance a project for a certain period of time. And because of our school capacity, people have run into issues with funding, with getting the money from a bank to go. They're not going to allow us to build 4 years out because they don't want to finance us that long. So that's kind of a side point of all of this stuff. But so for the most part, with what Walter was going to cover today, we've looked at the things that you all see. So the road frontage variances, the setback variances, the variances for building limit lines, what you're looking at when they look at plats, when they put them up on a screen. Walter's talked about the different types of surveys that you'll see. So exhibits, you're going to see boundary surveys. And then, we've obviously showed you some examples of minor plats and consolidation plats. We've showed you some from other counties as well and things that they require. We've talked a little bit about record plats, which isn't something that you all deal with, but just so you know the different terms and what they mean. And then really he talked a lot about the pins and yeah, he went through a lot of different stuff there. So does anybody have any questions? Everybody's crystal clear?
Well,
Be a surveyor tomorrow, right?
a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I even learned some stuff today that
Yeah.
I started in '86.
Wow.
I'll be 40 years in next year.
So yeah, but there's a lot of work that he does. He may come up and do a presentation before you all, but you can see where a lot of his work occurs after your all's approval, which is, and it also gives you all an idea of, a lot of times you all ask questions, which is fine and good, but when you all put those conditions of approval in there of a minor plat application must be submitted to staff and approved prior to your all's decision being approved, you can see where there's a lot more work that goes into it. I mean, staff, we send it out to agencies. And so sometimes we'll get into asking questions about, well, what does the fire department say about it? And those are things that will be handled initially. So find that those questions get asked, but there's a lot of procedure that goes into, the stuff he does after your all's approval.
Yeah.
So
I'd say a fair amount of questions you guys ask are covered behind the scenes that you guys really didn't know what's going on. Like fire department or school, stuff like that that's all covered before the minor plat gets approved. So all that has to be taken care of when it goes to Ryan after you guys see, yes, we'll approve this variance or waiver. Then it goes to Ryan and his staff, and it has to meet their approvals, which covers all the stuff he was talking about, other agencies and stuff.
And one small note, before we wrap up, is a lot of people want to spend the bare minimum amount of money before they know they've got approval. So a lot of times you all will ask questions on, do you all have elevations of what this is going to look like? A lot of people want that approval from you all first before they solicit the work of an architect to come up with drawings. So while those questions are important, a lot of those questions sometimes can't be answered at our level in the board hearing. And I know you all are like, well, how am I supposed to make an accurate decision? Just know there's other steps in the process. You all are kind of that first domino to fall before it starts with those other dominoes that come into play. And so, architecture, what's this thing going to look like is important, but a lot of people will do the bare minimum that they have to financially before they get into the other steps.
And that's when somebody hires me, that's what I do. I break it down in two sections. If I'm doing an exhibit, I'll give them a price to do the exhibit, and then if it gets approved, a little extra to go through the minor plat. That way, if I tell somebody it's going to cost you $4,500 to do this boundary survey that you want me to do, if you want to do a consolidation or division, but that based on approval for road frontage, stuff like that, which has to get approved first. So, okay, well, it's $4,500 to do this. I don't want to charge them $4,500 and then come to here and it gets denied for whatever reason. Yeah. So I tell them, okay, well, basically break down in half. So if it's 45, it'd be $2,500 to do the exhibit and then $2,000 to do the minor plat, because I still got to do more work afterwards. Yeah. And I find a lot of people are really amenable to that kind of thing.
So, yeah. So with that, we thank Walter for joining us, and we'll write you all down for an hour of training and whoever else watches this. So thank you very much.
Okay.